Ladies and gentlemen, hello! It's Wednesday! It's January 9th, 2013, and welcome to the Day 9 Daily, where we learn to be a better gamer. In today's daily, I actually think that you should watch the introduction period before we step into the game. I know you might be an archive viewer who loves to skip ahead, but in today's daily, we're doing a whole bunch of stuff. So let me outline it, while hopefully not spraying myself with too much saliva. In this daily, we are going to be looking at a variety of Protoss vs. Protoss games provided by White Raw. Yay! So we can get the chance to see what he's been doing on the Heart of the Swarm ladder. Opening up, we're going to talk a little bit about the general notion of timing the Mothership core. Yeah, I got my notes here. We're going to look at the general notion of timing the Mothership core, some good and bad examples. We're also going to see some of the ways the Mothership core is used to defend an expansion, also a good and bad example. Following that, we're going to have a little bit of fun, looking at some games where I question how strong some of the choices to go air are, but that's fine. We're going to look at games where White Rock goes air in sort of a fashion, and then we're going to wrap up by having some fun. We're going to see a beautifully executed strategy by White Raw not working so well, and then we're going to see his redemption story. There's a lot going on, but in short, Mothership core timings, onto some early expand logics, and then a lot of stuff about air at the end, good and bad games, and a redemption story. Yes! Thank you, White Raw, once again. Mwah, you are so sexy, and I have no problem blowing a kiss to you via webcam as a man that respects you. All the replays are over on his website. And the links are posted over on my website, so no matter where you go, you can get the games that we are going to be seeing today. In other exciting news, Monday is Fun Day Monday. I'll be talking about the topic at the end of the show. However, I wanted to note that all the wonderful subscribers to the Day 9 Daily, once again, on Monday is when we're going to be giving you the a beta key to a free game, or a free beta key to a game, so that way you can play it. Yeah, it's an indie game called Marvin's Mittens that I like a lot. Once again, if you subscribe to the Day 9 Daily, the voluntary $5 a month subscription, you get a nice little treat every other Monday. And that's going to be the first big one of 2013. Getting free games. Oh, it feels so good. Oh my God. Have I been losing weight? Maybe. But I'm scared to get on a scale. Let's talk a little bit about Protoss vs. Protoss, hopping right on in to a game. Where is it? It was the game. Yes, it was a game on Aquilon Wastes. I think most notably, my life hurts because a patch came out at around 3 p.m. today, right in the middle of daily preparation. HotS patch. Where is it? HotS balance update. You know, screw it. I'll just go to Reddit. Let me just talk through a little bit of what's going to be changing. In particular, if we actually just look here at the patch change, right here we see that really not that much has changed for the Protoss. Protoss, basically the Mothership core lost its detection, and the Oracle gained that detection ability, and vice versa. Yeah. Other than that, nothing too much has changed. So fortunately, everything that's said in today's daily is pretty much still reasonable. Everything I said in yesterday's daily, screw it. We're no value, none. No, actually, there's some nice meaty stuff, but there's no Caduceus reactor giving you infinity healing. So let's drink some coffee. Let's drink some water out of this wonderful Riot Games glass. Fantastic. I've never actually played League of Legends, but I think League of Legends seems pretty great. And the people at Riot are awesome, and I will support them by drinking out of this glass. Wait a minute, we're not supposed to spew venom? We're not? What? Oh, that's right. I can just be happy that I play whatever I like playing. Oh, being a gamer. Whoa, that's loud. In this first game, in this first very fast game that we're going to look at, I want to talk about Mothership core timing. What I'm going to do is I'm not going to look at White Raw at the start. I'm going to look at his opponent, whose name is Zug or Zugbox. Zugbox is going to do something that I would describe as intuitive. Going to be doing something that is, he's going to be teching, and he's going to say, I will defend myself with a Mothership core while I tech. This seems very reasonable, right? See, here's the early assimilator, there's the appropriately timed pylon, throwing guys right into gas. Here's Mothership core, Stalker, Warp Gate is going to pop up, essentially on time, not super early. And then Oogbox gets himself a second gate, because why not, I've got the money, and instantly slams out a Twilight Council. Second Stalker, also coming up. Yeah, I mean, this looks very reasonable from an intuitive point of view. However, everything in StarCraft is built upon timings, and we can see timing-wise, we don't have a particularly strong mix for when an opponent would be trying to swing on up into our face. Indeed, we can do this sort of thing, where we throw down this photon overcharge on our main Nexus, but we're still struggling a bit. We are, however, getting the Dark Shrine, which is fine for the purposes of rushing. Well, actually, let me rephrase that. We're getting a Dark Shrine, which is fine for the purposes of praying our opponent doesn't have detection and we just kill him right away. But it's still significant to note how easily White Ra was able to just smash over his opponent because of this early Mothership core. In fact, very, very early Mothership cores wind up being a little weak in the matchup because we abandon map control. The sort of converse of that is to say that in this matchup, suddenly it's quite a bit more important to be willing to take some strides forward towards the opponent's side of things. And we're going to see White Ra doing this a lot. In fact, we'll just see in this game a very simple example of him doing this. Everyone, I'm sure, has seen some variation of getting 2 gateways early on in this matchup. The goal being to get 3 Stalkers out pretty quickly, because if we have 3 Stalkers up, then we can scout all the possible venues, or all the possible spots where our opponent could be 4-gating us. But also, again, we're willing to take some steps forwards. We haven't seen anything, building another pylon, we're still really not seeing anything, we're not seeing any proxy things. So White Ra is actually just going to expand behind this, while all this is going on. And because he's poking at the ramp, this poke, doesn't see a sentry, doesn't actually see any units, and is more than content to push up and exploit the fact that a lot of players, once again, are getting this way too early Mothership core, where you have to be way pulled back to the Nexus. And White Ra gets an expand up behind it. That's actually all that I want to show in that game. We're going to open up another game where we're going to see White Ra do an early expand. The Mothership core timing is going to be very important because it relates to our expansion. I will now tell you a really important number. Let us numbers. We only numbers every once in a while, and then we just go back to remembering the lesson we learned from numbering. Alright. Alright. It's a good stretch. A Mothership core starts with 50 energy, and we need 100 energy to turn our Nexus into a big cannon. You heal about, or you get about 2 energy, or 1 energy per 2 seconds, so it's about 100 seconds. A Nexus takes 100 seconds to build. So in other words, the length of time it takes a Nexus to build is the exact same amount of time it takes for that Mothership core to get the extra 50 energy. So if we're early expanding, we want our Mothership core to finish right around the time we started. Cool, let's see that in an example. Because we saw an example of White Ra against someone who did not have the best Mothership core timing, and that opponent was punished by White Ra's ballerness as a result. But here we are going to see something that's quite nice. Here's White Ra playing against Panda Tank. Panda Tank is just a wonderful man. I really like Panda Tank. I believe he is training at the team house that's out in Rancho Cucamonga. But met him in real life. He's a very fine, giggly man. I believe from South Africa, which is a super cool place to be from. Also, of course, pandas. Why not? Let's just do that logic. So White Ra, I will say right now, he is going to be early expanding. He's going to be early expanding. As we've seen in the 2 days ago daily, the Protoss vs. Zerg White Raw special, as we saw in yesterday's daily, the PvT White Raw special, there's a lot of decisions to make in your opening build. It's not the way it is quite now in Wings of Liberty, where you can just sort of like and build away to the 10-minute mark. White Raw is going to be doing some really nice scouting here. So great, White Raw's opening up with a very typical looking opening, going for the core, the assimilator, second gateway. Alright, cool. It's looking very similar to what we did before. We're giving ourselves some options. Excellent. We're opening up with this Stalker, almost always a reasonable choice. Building a pylon on this edge for some spotting, almost always a reasonable choice. So we get to here. Notice the time that White Raw is getting here. For any of you who don't know the significance of 4:15, 4:15 is about when Stalkers pop out. Or, in particular, the first... it's about when the first Cybernetics core unit can pop out. So White Raw is actually scouting so that it arrives there. Why is that? He's not going to be able to see in here too much, but he is going to be able to get, say, this very useful bit of information. A sentry is there. Alright, cool. We don't know for a fact if he's going to be going for Robo or more gateways or Blink or whatever. We don't know any of that, but we do know that we're safe for right about the early part of the game. In other words, you can decide now that we want to expand kind of quickly. So here are these two dudes getting made, a sentry, because we want to build up energy, a zealot as a little bit of a contingency. And here finally comes out the Mothership core. It's quite late compared to what the player did in the last game. But great, White Raw is going to have that guy popping up right about the time that he starts his expand. Ta-da! Oopsie daisy, excuse me. Ta-da! There's the Nexus going down. And then, of course, we saw a sentry. So, since we saw our opponent build a sentry, there's nothing wrong with moving a Stalker this far forward at the start of the game. Really, really clever. Really, really clean. Very good. White Raw does not have to worry that much about building too many units, just getting some sentries up. And notice, right around when we get 100 energy and can turn our Nexus into a cannon, our Nexus finishes up. Also, what's nice in Heart of the Swarm, we have this ability to make the Hallucinated Phoenix to just sort of check out what's up. This formation you almost have to build because you don't know if he's going for a big Blink attack, so you need the Immortals. And if he is going for Blink, you also need these gateways as well. So we're not quite sure what our opponent is up to, yet still, this Mothership core timing is really nice. Panda Tank, oh my gosh, reveals what he is doing. He is in fact going for Phoenix play. And we see White Raw scouting everything that's going on too. A very typical looking Heart of the Swarm Phoenix play as well. Normally this is a real nightmare to deal with, but White Raw simply makes his main Nexus into that Giganto Cannon, and then he can focus on here, defending here. With his next warp-ins, he can then back up and defend up in the main. And at this point, I honestly think that the correct decision is to go Blink against a player going air. I mean, it's rarely going to be bad, and it's a little risky not to do that. I don't want to go too much more into these two opening games because I want to make sure that I can get into a third game in part 1. But still, this is some really cool Mothership core usage where we're also seeing some flexibility in strategies because of the Mothership core timing. But most of all, White Raw is doing some really nice scouting of the opponent, seeing clearly what some signals are and just exploiting that. If our opponent looked like he was going to be aggressive, we would do something different. And we'll look at those games later on in this daily. What is the last game I wanted to look at? Ah, yes, a game of him versus BabyKnight on Cloud Kingdom. Come on, load. Load replay. Load! Load away! Ah. The one thing that I want to emphasize in this first segment before we wrap up is that in my research of White Raw's games, the Mothership core is not just this instant solve-all. there was something that I said that I sort of glossed past, but is one of those really important, juicy facts that's easy to overlook. I said, look at this. White Ra can cast Photon Overcharge, whatever the hell it's called. He can cast Make Nexus a Cannon on his primary Nexus in his home, so that he can buy enough time to get another Stalker Warp in. Ah. It's very, you know, you hear someone say it and you're like, oh, I guess it sort of makes sense. Yeah. But the fact is that as powerful as the Nexus is for that minute, it runs out after a minute. So that actually makes you super, super, super vulnerable. So it's not that you can say, oh, I'm defended because I have an Immortal and Cannon Nexus. It's instead saying something like, I'm safe because I have Immortal Cannon Nexus when he first attacks, and that'll buy me enough time to get out a second Immortal, almost a third. That is the sort of sentence we want to be working with. It buys a lot of time. Not a lot of people are going to unwisely charge and sacrifice all their stuff, which is why we have this game from White Ra against BabyKnight. To highlight it as an example, let's go ahead and see what White Ra's doing and see the sort of signals that he's working with. Do-do-do-do. So, excuse me. White Ra does a very normal gateway and then a simulator play. Let me just do this. There we go. He gets his cybernetics core. He gets his second gas. Meanwhile, in this base, what does he see? He sees his opponent doing something similar. Not a guarantee that BabyKnight is not 4-gating. This extra chrono boost on the main Nexus does tend to feel not so 4-gatey. That's fine. We see White Ra getting his second gateway up in very normal fashion. There's Stalker 1. White Ra continuing to poke around, pulls back, and is going to go ahead and hold. Or actually, I would hold there. He's going to go ahead and pull back to his home, where he has halted all production and is doing something that I am not quite as huge a fan of. There's a little bit... Oh, I neglected to mention an important thing. As we see White Ra running away, the fact that this Zealot stopped is very significant. Is very, very significant. Why? Because any aggressive player would be marching that Zealot right on out. That's part of the reason why I was like, well, we should probably hold this until that Stalker gets out. That's a very important bit of information, because it implies that BabyKnight is going to be passive. So great, White Ra is not going to go for 2 more Stalkers and try to get map control. He's just going to go for 2 sentries, and he's going to expand. Which of course means that we should probably get our Mothership core started quite quickly. And there it is. Likewise, White Ra just does a little marching around, gets zapped a little bit by this sentry, and feels good about himself. Now, in the last game, we saw White Ra go for a blind robo, but here we see White Ra going for 2 more gateways. This is actually where I think that the core of problems start to arise. Bluntly, BabyKnight is just going 3-gate blink with a Mothership core. I can sum up what BabyKnight's doing oh so easily, with of course that usual BabyKnight-esque optimization. And then we send out a Phoenix to find out Ermagerd, Turk. Again, I do think that it's pretty critical to be getting that robo up right then and there, because even though we do Cannon Nexus, which we see is holding things off, we're not buying time for any amazing new thing to arrive for us. White Ra does have a slight probe lead, 32 to 26. He is trying to take out this Mothership core, which would be a very nice kill, but not a critical kill, because BabyKnight can always remake it, and it rebuilds nearly instantly. And again, we went Cannon Nexus again, lost the Mothership core, but what do you do now as White Ra? There's no immortal that was going to pop out to really tip the balance in your favor. There was no... I mean, basically immortals are what you really need here. Now, I'll just pause here. Actually, I'll just zoom forward to GG. Micro, 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 micro. GG. Okay. All I'm saying in this position, or all it seems like I might be saying, is you need to get an immortal when you expand. You need to get immortal when you expand. And a lot of people who are Wings of Liberty type players would be just like, oh yeah, totally, it makes total sense. Yeah, of course, you always get the immortal, like there. But in Heart of the Swarm, we're starting to see players experiment a lot more with Zealot Archon and Void Ray, because the Void Rays have that new charge up. So a lot of people are defending their early expands with largely gateway units. And then that way, they have half their tech done. If they're going Zealot Archon and Void Ray, they've already built the gateways to do that transition. It doesn't make sense to go Immortal, and then once you've held that off, then go for the Zealot Archon, and then go for the Void Ray. You're going in too many directions at once. So, yeah. Yes. All we have seen in Part 1, not all we've seen, among the many delightful things we've seen in Part 1, are the importance of having that Mothership core timing down. We saw a not-so-good example in Game 1. We saw an excellent example of it in Game 2, where White Ross set himself up nicely defensively. But in Game 3, we got to see that the Mothership core does not solve all our problems. A lot of really ultra-standard timing attacks are still going to be a real bitch unless we have something good coming down the road. Because at the end of the day, all the Mothership core is really doing is buying us more time in a lot of PvP openings. I'll learn to clap in the break, and when we come back, we're going to be talking about air openings. Things like the Oracle. See you in 2 minutes. In 2 minutos.